We are heading to Switzerland today, to what was once the world's largest civilian nuclear fallout shelter. And we're going to learn how this beautiful, peaceful, affluent country was and still is one of the most doomsday prepared nations on Earth.
I had no idea.
Yeah, not just chocolate and cuckoo clocks. This is Where Did Everyone Go? With me, Dr. Sascha Auerbach.
And me, Tom Ward. A journey into the weird history of abandoned places. So where in lovely Switzerland are we heading then, Sascha?
Well, we're at the foot of the Alps mountain range in the medieval city of Lucerne.
Okay. And from the video footage we have, this city looks stunning. You've got this picture-perfect scene of a tranquil lake and a settlement hugging its shore, with mountains and forests in the background.
Yeah, and in one of the city's residential suburbs is a children's playground, and at the the edge of it is an unassuming small concrete building covered in earth and partially hidden by dangling tree branches.
Though, when you open the door, you quickly realize it's far from an ordinary building. This is the entrance to an underground labyrinth, a whole warren of passages, rooms, and stairwells.
But there's a busy freeway tunnel that seems to pass right through the middle of it, so that's pretty odd.
Okay then, Sascha, I'm surprised this is in Switzerland of all places. Why is it here, and where did everyone go?
Where indeed. Now, Switzerland has always been neutral. It's never been part of any military alliance, despite being right in the middle of Europe. Neutrality is part of the national identity.
Sitting on the fence is a man who sees both sides of both sides.
Yeah,
House Martins.
Also being the world's center of banking helps, because who wants to mess with Switzerland, because then they cut your credit.
Right.
It's a strong defense.
Fair enough.
So in the years following the Second World War, Switzerland's fear was not of a direct attack as part of the Cold War, since it wasn't allied with either the Warsaw Pact or NATO, but rather that it was going to become collateral damage of a wider war between the Soviets and their allies and the U.S. and their allies. Mm-hmm. So they take a drastic step to protect their citizenry. They introduce a law that ensures every single Swiss citizen has access to a nuclear fallout shelter. This was colloquially known as the Shelters for All law.
That's very nice of them.
Yeah, it's the kind of thing you can only do when you are a massively rich country with a relatively small population.
Yeah, it worked out well.
Yeah. So some houses have their own private bunkers, but not all, and it wasn't practical to build millions of bunkers for every house that didn't have one. So instead, they built huge communal bunkers that could house thousands of people. This is the Sonnenberg shelter, completed at a cost of over $450 million. Oof. Clearly, the price of protecting most of a city's entire population doesn't come cheap.
No. Though my first question is, why is there a freeway running through the middle of it?
Well, this is an important part of the shelter, actually. The site they chose was inside a mountain, but there was already 2 mile-long freeway tunnels going through it. So instead of working around it or deconstructing it, they made it part of the shelter. A 7-story logistics center was built on top of the 2 tunnels, and in the event of a nuclear incident, concrete blast doors would seal the tunnels, and the road would be converted into a vast makeshift accommodation block for 20,000 people.
Okay.
Each of these doors weighed 350 tons and was 1.5 meters thick, and they were apparently able to withstand the blast of a 1 megaton nuclear bomb as close as a kilometer, so about half a mile away.
Okay. 350 tons, the weight of the door. Mm-hmm. For our listeners who don't know how much that is, it's about 350 Suzuki Swifts.
Suzuki Swifts.
If you picture that.
I don't think a Suzuki Swift is a common car in America. No? Yeah.
Oh, okay.
But I think our audience
Can you insert another car that would weigh about a ton?
A Ford Escort, maybe?
A Ford Escort.
Yeah.
So 350 of those piled up
in a door.
That's the door.
That's a heavy door.
Yeah, that's a big door.
Yeah.
You're going to need some serious hinges.
Well, I would say the more incredible thing is being able to withstand a 1 megaton blast only half a mile away. I mean, I did some little simulations on my computer. There's actually this webpage which we mentioned later where you can go and simulate a nuclear blast. And if a 1 megaton bomb dropped in the middle of London, places quite far away would be utterly flattened.
Right, including London.
Well, most of London, really.
Right.
But even places on the suburbs, like, they wouldn't stand a chance. So the fact that these doors were thick enough in theory to survive a blast that close is really quite remarkable.
But did they test it?
No, they didn't drop a bomb in the country. It works! Huzzah! Now we go back to making chocolate and banking.
Yeah, that's the population dispatched. It didn't work, unfortunately, so it's just me left.
But now we have to build fewer shelters. So let's talk about how this place was supplied. They had 450 tons of flat pack structures, beds and bathrooms, all stored ready for quick assembly when disaster struck. And with so much to set up in a time of emergency, they had a system for tracking the progress. And you can still see the remains of this system in the shelter today. You'd probably imagine a digital display or some sort of early computer technology, but remember, that might be wiped out by a nuclear blast. So they went old school, physical. They used Lego.
Nice.
Yellow to display what was done, and red what was still in progress.
I love that. Nothing wrong with that. Nothing
Isn't
wrong
that
with
clever?
Lego. Keep it simple.
I kind of want to do my taxes with Lego now. It
That
would
would
be
make
so
it
much of
more
a
fun.
fun process. It was like, oh yeah, green refund.
I love Lego. I style my hair on Lego men still to this day.
Oh, that explains a lot.
That explains the detachable look.
I thought it was detachable.
Yeah.
You pick it off and put on curls or red or a helmet, a knight's helmet. You always lose the heads for those guys, don't you? It's always the heads that go first on the Lego men.
Oh, is it?
Yeah. My son's Lego box is full of headless Lego men.
I always lose the hands.
Oh, the hands?
The hands always.
The hands pop off?
Yeah.
Oh, really?
I've got a lot of my old Lego men are missing a hand.
Oh, that's creepy.
They're just a little stump.
You got to make little hooks out of paper clips.
Yeah.
Anyway, back to the Fallout shelter. Speaking of losing your head and losing your
Is
hands.
Lego nuclear war proof as well?
Well,
so in the event of a nuclear strike, would the Lego survive like cockroaches?
Well, it would still work if it wasn't melted. I mean, it's just plastic, right? Matchbox cars too. None of the Game Boys will survive.
I've seen war-torn Game Boys.
War-torn Game
I have.
Boys. Really?
When
did you see
there's a
war-torn Game
museum
Boys?
with items in it that from the Iraq War, and one of them is a Game Boy
Oh,
from
wow.
from the George Bush Senior Gulf War. There's a Game Boy that's survived a blast, and it's kind of dented, and it's in a glass cabinet.
That's kind of poignant, actually. I wonder if the child that owned the Game Boy survived the blast. Now, there's some more details about the shelter. There's a complex air filtration system to make sure the tunnel's occupants had a clean supply of breathable oxygen. And to ensure life underground ran smoothly, the logistics center contained a command room, a hospital, a prison, a radio station, and a staff of 700.
Oof, that's some serious infrastructure there.
You can still see the switchboard in the communications room that operators would have used to contact the outside world or whatever was left of it after a nuclear exchange.
I mean, though, living there would have been difficult, even for a few days, even with all that kind of order and structure and...
Yeah. It doesn't take much to imagine how difficult it would be to sleep against a chorus of thousands of people coughing, snoring, crying, burping. But imagine the smell of 20,000 unwashed bodies. I mean, the bunker's showers were very few in number, and they were really meant for use by hospital patients. They weren't for everyday washing.
Yeah, I wouldn't have liked that. I'm a very light sleeper.
You're very light.
And I cry in my sleep as well.
Are you a frequent shower? You cry in your... Can one cry in their sleep?
When I'm sleeping away from home, I always cry in my sleep.
Oh, that's so sweet. Do you take a banky with you? Do you need a banky?
Yeah.
Yeah,
I do.
I know I don't cry in my sleep, but I do speak in my sleep, and I often speak quite intelligibly, which can be very confusing to my partner.
Oh, really? So she thinks you're awake?
Yeah. So what I say, you said something like, "There's no way that's going to work." And I had no idea what you were talking about because we weren't doing anything. We were in bed asleep.
I once was with a lady that I was dating, and in my sleep, apparently, I said, "I'm not gay."
I'm sure she found that reassuring at the time.
And apparently, also, I said, "I've got to go and meet Karen in Luton." And the same night, I've got to go and meet Karen in Luton.
Do you know a Karen who lives in Luton?
No.
I got to go and meet Karen in Luton.
Yeah.
Probably thought it was code. She probably thought you were a spy, but a straight spy, you know.
Yeah.
Okay, so There was a kitchen in this shelter, but it only catered for staff and hospital patients. It wasn't possible to cook for 20,000 people. So each person was supposed to bring 2 weeks worth of ready-to-eat food with them when they entered the bunker.
Okay.
Storing it and eating it on their already cramped bunk bed. So there's a lot of impracticalities here. Now, the prison had solitary confinement cells, which you would probably have been better off in, bizarrely enough, because downstairs in the tunnel, you'd only have 1 square meter of space, or about 1 square yard of space to move around in, and it was full of 20,000 people doing the all aforementioned biological activities we just discussed.
Yeah, I wouldn't have liked that. I get very claustrophobic. I love windows. I can't stand other people. I like yoga. I like that.
Well, but it's also
even
like,
just doing that's quite nice.
I mean, think about this. Like the whole idea of this, surviving the nuclear war in a bunker is pretty absurd, because survive for what? Like if there's an actual nuclear exchange, you might survive in a couple extra 2 weeks in here, but the ground's going to be irradiated, the water's going to be irradiated, the entire infrastructure is going to be destroyed, like the food supply systems are breaking down. So great, like you get to be uncomfortable for 2 weeks before you go outside and die.
Yeah.
This whole idea of, I think these bunker building campaigns, whether it's rich people in Greenland or the Swiss, it's an exercise in total futility, and what a huge waste of money. I mean, $500 million to build this thing.
Yeah, is it the illusion of safety?
I think it's the illusion of safety.
It gives people a sense of...
Yeah, it's a political move, not a sensible move. This is also true in Berlin. Berlin built a whole bunch of bunkers, and the idea was that, we'd be safe if there was a war, and because, people in Berlin had a memory of being bombed during World War II, but it was more about a political thing. When they actually did the math, they realized they only built enough bunkers for, tens of thousands of people in a city of millions of people. And even then, it's questionable about how long they would have survived down there. So
in a way,
it's a fantasy.
It doesn't really matter. People just need to feel that when the worst thing happens, that there's a chance that they'll be okay.
Yeah.
And that helps them breathe, because it's almost too overwhelming to think of your own annihilation.
Well, but it does get in the way of more sensible policy, like, say, nuclear disarmament.
Yeah.
That would be one way to be safe from nuclear war, is to actually, break down the bombs.
But that's not how humanity rolls, is it?
That's not how humanity rolls, unfortunately. But even in a best case scenario, a limited nuclear exchange where, in theory, there's enough unirradiated land that people would survive, you only have to look at what happens in the Superdome in New Orleans during Hurricane Katrina for a recent example of the inherent dangers of forcing so many people into a confined space during a disaster. I mean, things got pretty wild there within just a couple of days, and it became a dangerous place to be. 3 people died in the Superdome. I mean, still better than being in New Orleans in the middle of the hurricane.
Yeah, but it just shows, doesn't it, quite how fragile society really is. If you tip it and then you force people into a high stress situation where they're traumatized, they're removed from their coping strategies from their home. There's a kind of what happens to people in that hot pot when they're not able to just retreat to their home. The illusions of civilization kind of fall away. Yeah,
absolutely. No, I have this debate with my partner all the time because I'm an advocate of incremental political change, and she's more of a hardcore revolutionary. And I was like, look, you burn something down, you have no idea what comes out of the ashes. When things get chaotic, people rarely behave well. But
it's easy to burn things down, and it's a glorious feeling at the time, but actually then dealing with what happens next.
Yeah. It's all good and well to say, well, we're going to radically reform this and radically reform that, and but destroying is easy, building is hard.
I always notice as well, like, depending on what part of town you're in, if you're in an affluent area, everyone's all kind of laid back and like, after you, everyone's like standing at the door, after you. But if you go to a poorer area, there's none of that shit. Everyone's just like, fuck you, I'm first.
Really?
Because there's less.
I haven't observed that.
No, but there's like, you go for a bus queue.
Yeah.
In North London, everyone's like, queuing neatly. But then when there's only one bus for 600 people, it's like all that goes out the window.
All gloves are off.
So it's kind of a performance a lot of the time.
My observation is really that it's more about insiders and outsiders. That whatever neighborhood you go to, as long as the people there, as long as you look like them and they think you belong there, they will treat you with courtesy. But if they think you're an outsider or a stranger, you're much more likely to get the cold shoulder. I mean, some of the friendliest places I've been in London or in New York or in like Hong Kong for that matter are not wealthy areas. They're areas of just ordinary working people. But as long as I show that I'm not like a disaster tourist and I'm not there to rob them or arrest them, people tend to be very friendly and very welcoming. But I'm an optimist and a philanthropic in my own outlook, so experience is different. Maybe they're upset at you about the hair.
My hair's better than it used to be. It used to be much more like a shape of a mushroom.
Oh.
And people would get angry.
They would get angry?
They would get angry with me. I remember a woman came up to me at a nightclub and just said, why have you done that? She was actually angry. And I think she thought I was great.
Mm-hmm.
And this was a really brilliant hair statement. But she was just furious, and I bumped into her an hour later outside the kebab shop, and she was there again, just like, why you got that stupid fucking hair?
But anyway, my experience has actually been the opposite of yours, which is because I went to school with a bunch of rich people, and they were the most unpleasant people I've ever encountered.
Okay.
So I now try to stick with ordinary folks whenever I can. That's why I hang out with you. You're
the common man.
You're ordinary. You're the common man. We're the hoi polloi.
Hi.
And Lewis, you don't get any more hoi or polloi than Lewis.
Broken Lewis, haunted Lewis.
If you're gonna make like Joe Average, man, Lewis would be right there fitting the mold.
It's the man from the catacombs. It's Lewis. He's not been the same since he went underground.
Now, of course, if he ends up in these shelters, he'd probably be the first one to suggest eating his colleagues too. But,
he'll be in the prison. I love the fact there's a prison, even in this bunker.
He'd immediately become the strong man running it.
Yeah, what happened to you? Well, after the nuclear fallout, I committed petty crimes underground in the bunker and I was incarcerated.
They elected me as leader, or rather, I killed all my rivals and thus became leader by default.
Yeah.
He has that brutal glint in his eye. Vicious.
But it's working for him.
Anyway, despite the fairly obvious issues with this gigantic shelter, in 1987, they conducted a full-scale test known as Operation Ant. And we'll hear how that went after the break.
So, finally time for some nuclear bomb action.
They're not dropping actual bombs. The world's largest civilian nuclear fallout shelter was ready for a non-nuclear test.
Nuclear fallout. I quite like that as an expression. It sounds so innocuous, doesn't it?
It does not sound innocuous at all.
Well, we had a bit of a fallout.
I broke up with my H-bomb. And
yeah.
No, it does not sound innocuous.
One thing led to another.
And now it's got a half-life of 1,600 years.
Don't go to sleep on your grievances. Look what happens.
God, your genetic material starts to break down. So the Swiss might be known for their timekeeping, and I'm wearing a Swiss watch myself right now. Very proud of it. But this particular operation did not run like Swiss clockwork. First of all, there were problems with the door mechanism, and it took 24 hours to shut the doors.
Oh, God.
Which is about, that's 23 hours and 59 minutes too long when you think about it.
That's not what you need when you got a nuclear bomb up your ass.
Nope. And apparently, one of the doors didn't even close properly for all that time.
I mean, it's easy to judge that, isn't it? But you try and build a door frame for a 350-ton door.
Yes. With
a margin of
error. They cut corners on the frame. The builder was like, well, I think it'll work.
Yeah, and you got to screw in the gigantic hinges, and the door handle's got to be,
Do
oversized.
you have the right hinge for that? He's like, no, I'll have to call my distributor. It might take a couple of weeks.
Yeah.
But I got this thing in my truck that might serve.
I can improvise one.
I could improvise one. Yeah. Takes like a paper clip and shoves it in.
Yeah, like MacGyver. Okay, so that's not a good start, is it?
No. So you got malfunctioning doors, but this wasn't the only life-threatening issue. It became clear that the 20,000 beds could not be assembled quickly enough, and that they'd run out of water in just 2 weeks.
Okay, so what happens? They just declare the whole thing a failure and abandon it?
See, now I'm going to sing. Oh, you're going to say, I thought you would say they declared a mistake, and then I could sing my Men at Work song. It's a mistake, doot, doot, doot. Which is all about, like, World War III.
Oh, I don't know that one.
Oh, God. All these obscure bands, and you don't know Men at Work?
Surely Man Down Under or whatever is the song for this
Land Down Under, not Man Down Under. God damn it. You haven't seen Star Wars. You don't know Men at Work. Under. There you go.
You made me a Swiss sandwich.
No, Vegemite sandwich.
Vegemite sandwich.
Anyway, we'll come back to that.
Song.
We'll come back to that.
Song.
I can't believe I'm giving you a musical education with all your knowledge.
Colin Hay.
Yes, that one was correct.
Had a solo career.
He did.
I had a drink problem.
Really?
And he had a real issue there, and then he started doing solo shows, and he said that there was a moment where he was playing to 4 people, And he remembered winning a Grammy in the early 80s and how he'd been the king of the world and how he was playing to 4 people and how that just meant that gave him the strength to just persist. He was wanting to share something pure. He was like, you know what? Who cares? If 4 people here and they're enjoying it, that's fine. Then he pushed through, and now he's a treasure.
It's like one of my academic papers. But you've managed to come up with a story even more depressing than nuclear war. Like, well done. Well done, you.
We got 5 people listening to this, so we're already better than him. Colin, if you're listening.
Actually, one of them went out to work on their bunker, so it's only 4 now.
Oh, okay.
Now, aware of its shortcomings, the scope and scale of the site's use as a nuclear bunker was significantly reduced in the years following the failed test of Operation Ant. The 2 tunnels reverted to being used just for cars, but the logistics center above has been preserved and remains on standby as an emergency bunker ready to house 2,000 people.
Oh, okay.
Just 10% of those in the original plan.
Much more civilized.
Yeah, a little bit more personal space.
But the law in Switzerland that everyone should have access to a shelter, is that still in place?
Well, in 2005, a member of parliament submitted an initiative that would have removed the obligation to provide shelters in private dwellings. He stressed the pointlessness of these, quote, relics of the past, which inevitably pushed up the cost of building residential accommodation, because you always had to build a shelter as well. But after analyzing the situation, the government came to the conclusion that they were still useful, not only in the event of armed conflict, but also in the light of possible terrorist attacks with dirty weapons, chemical accidents, and natural disasters. They are really hanging on to this bunker idea for grim death, no pun intended. Another attempt to repeal the law happened in 2011, and this was just about to go through when the Fukushima nuclear disaster happened in Japan, and everyone decided that actually the law should stay. Now, I want to say at this point that this is, to me, like a very Swiss mentality, like this idea of bunkering down. I mean, the whole reason that the various cantons, the mini states that became Switzerland survived is they were in the mountains, and they're like, if we just hunker down and fill the mountain passes with armed pikemen and crossbowmen, we'll be safe. And this constant turtling really seems to be part of the national character. So, good on them for remaining neutral during all these conflicts, but this unreasonable belief that if you just tuck your head into your shell, you're going to be protected from all danger is it's just a bit goofy as near as I can tell. So today, Switzerland officially has enough nuclear fallout shelters to accommodate its entire population, should they ever be needed. Again, so they can survive 2 weeks before dying of radiation sickness afterwards. And this right is in fact enshrined in the Constitution, which reads, quote, every inhabitant must have a protected place that can be reached quickly from his place of residence. So over 300,000 private shelters exist and approximately 5,000 public shelters. A general emergency exercise is carried out every 2 years in the vicinity of one of the 4 nuclear power plants in the country. And Switzerland has more than 7,000 sirens for warning the population in a broad range of possible emergency cases, including a nuclear accident. These are tested annually on the first Wednesday in February, and they consist of a bird that emerges from a giant wooden tower and goes, cuckoo, cuckoo.
How quaint. I'm glad some things remain traditional. Though I also hope that if there is a nuclear attack, it isn't in early February. Otherwise, people will think it's a false alarm.
That's true. Didn't you hear the cuckoo?
Come on,
it's just a test.
Oh,
it's just a test.
On, every year.
I'm right in the middle of my chocolate ration.
I'm right in the middle of my completely comfortable existence where nothing bad or good happens at all.
I'm conducting a large banking transaction.
Yes. I'm enjoying my affluent middle-class lifestyle where I don't need any release, such as music or comedy, because my joy is permanent and low level.
One of the guys I play basketball with is Swiss, and every time there's an argument, between any of the other 2 players, I always walk up to him. I was like, Marcus, make sure you remain neutral. Which is, comes natural to him.
Nice. I'm sure he enjoys it.
Now, for those,
you seem to piss off everyone in your basketball game.
I try to.
You're telling me a story about lifting a guy up.
Oh no, let's not go there.
Oh, okay.
Now, for those of you
who... There's a dark
side
side to this guy that you need to know about. Seems like the charming, foppish professor. Absolute monster on the court.
Yes, I'm laughing on the outside, but screaming on the inside. Now, for those of you who want to scream on the inside and the outside, there is a website called Nuke Map where you can drag a marker to wherever you'd like to target, choose a warhead yield, and then click to detonate on the map to see the level of destruction that various radiuses around the bomb, fireball radius, radiation radius, so on and so forth. I have experimented with this website the other day. You get to choose, too, whether it's a ground explosion or an air burst.
Nice.
It is extraordinarily
It
is extraordinarily depressing. And for anyone out there foolish enough to believe that they would survive a nuclear attack, whether in a bunker or not, I urge you to go to this site and see the level of destruction that will be inflicted by even a small bomb, let alone the giant warheads that people can lob at each other these days. Right. It will correct any misconceptions right quick.
I like misconceptions.
And I do find it amusing, with this kind of prepper culture that has taken off in the States. Like, I got to be prepped. I got to have a go bag, and I learn how to use an assault rifle and build up camo. It's like all it takes is about 5 seconds on Nuke Map, and you'd be like, yeah, this is a waste of time. I should spend this money on a new Barca lounger and a larger television.
Yeah, but a website with pictures of of annihilation is it's conceptual, but 5,000 bottles of Evian water in your cupboard, that gives you actual physical reassurance.
Yeah. Luckily, no one in London has a flat large enough to hold that much water, so we're all doomed. Well,
it sounds like a nice website if you're trying to avoid, drunk eBaying or whatever.
Yeah.
Since I started typing in how far my body would fly in the event of an explosion, I've bought less 90s band T-shirts, and my wife is less angry with me.
Yeah. Anyway, Nuke Map is a very interesting site, and it really brings home the fact that 50 years after the signing of the Treaty for the Non-Proliferation of Nuclear Weapons, which was signed in 1968, there's still 10,000 nuclear bombs spread around the world. 93% of them owned by Russia and the U.S. Or in the words of one analyst, we have enough missiles to turn the entire surface of the Earth into rubble and then to make the rubble jump.
Wow. Yeah, I hope I never see that.
Oh, yeah. I mean, it won't last long if you do, so.
So, this bunker was never used, essentially.
Except for the test. No.
Yeah.
Well, what would you use it for? I mean, what kind of disaster is Switzerland going to have that requires people to run into a bunker? A giant chocolate shortage? Banking collapse?
A website crash on a big bank.
All those cuckoos suddenly become sentient and start attacking people.
Yeah. But if there was a nuclear fallout, and then as you said before, it would be down there for 2 extra weeks playing Lego and
living in the body farts. Stink of 2,000 other unwashed Swiss,
or in prison if you're lucky enough,
or in prison
to get away from everyone. Yeah. You then wouldn't be able to come out anyway.
With the privilege of walking out into the nuclear hellscape, the irradiated hellscape that remains.
What would happen to you if you did? So you prise open the door somehow.
What happens? What is the effect of radiation on the human body?
You walk out onto that site. What happens? Tell me about that.
Well, if you were anywhere near a blast and it was a ground blast, you throw up a lot of irradiated material, and the effect of radiation on the body actually breaks down the cell walls. And dying of radiation sickness is actually super, super unpleasant, as you can imagine, because first you get really, really sick, and then there's this period. There's a funny word for it, not the honeymoon period, but there's like 24 hours where you actually feel fine, and then you just start to kind of simultaneously bleed out of every orifice, and you die in the most painful way possible. Yeah, it's pretty awful.
Okay, so that's what would happen if you did make it.
That's what radiation sickness does to you.
Right.
And then even if you're distant away from the blast, like you still are going to, if there's enough bombs dropped. And why would you drop just a few bombs? The radiation has an incredibly long half-life. It's not like poison gas which dissipates or something like that. I mean, it just stays active for thousands of years. All you have to do is get a small amount of it in your body, and you rapidly increase the risk of cancer as a result.
Okay.
So, for example, these watches used to have radium in them, which is a highly radioactive material. And, when you worked on them, you had to do it in a sealed environment. You had to be really careful because even just a tiny particle of radium, if you breathed it in and it got lodged in your lungs, a very high chance of causing tumors down the road. They now use a much less radioactive material called tritium.
Okay. Why were they using radium?
Because it glows in the dark very brightly. And it was the only one that they had access to at the time.
Oh.
Yeah. Discovered by Marie Curie, who, of course, eventually died because she was working with radioactive material.
Okay. Good charity shops.
Yeah, good charity shops. Well, they're an anti-cancer charity for a reason.
So this bunker building thing, this is very I'm hearing more about this now. I don't know if this has always been the case, but I feel like private citizens are also now building bunkers.
Oh yes,
Silicon Valley. It's
all these rich fools have
now.
to spend their money somehow because they don't want to spend it on things like education and healthcare for the rest of the people in their country. So why not build a giant bunker where you'll be safe? It's just an illusion. It's a total fantasy.
They talk about this event. That's what.
Yes,
call.
was the jackpot or whatever. Like, yeah, I think it's a sort of what's the right word? It's one of the ultimate expressions of the basic selfishness of this cohort of people is instead of actually putting these ill-gotten gains towards the betterment of mankind, it's all about making sure that they survive, when civilization collapses because of the system that they've exploited all this time. I mean, it's a real kind of circular logic. It's the things that could have been done with $500,000, instead $500 million instead of building this ridiculous, useless bunker. I mean, think of all the school trips that could have happened, or the schools that could have been built, or the hospitals, or the cancer treatments, or any number of things that you could have done. I mean, but no, build a giant bunker and the delusion that somehow people are going to survive a nuclear exchange. It's absurd.
Yeah, but Switzerland does have very progressive laws on heroin. You can actually, if you're a heroin user, there's clinics in the city centres.
That's a sensible policy.
Where you can go and get pharmaceutical grade heroin in a clean environment, and you get it 3 times a day. So maybe if there is a nuclear fallout, just have loads of heroin, and then you kind of wouldn't care.
Well, that's a much more peaceful way to go than radiation sickness, at least. Should we leave this one lie then?
Yeah.
All right.
Producer Lewis here. Thanks for listening to this episode of Where Did Everyone Go? New episodes every Wednesday. Follow, comment, and hit that notification bell so you don't miss out.